This is Down the Rabbit Hole, where we question the mysteries and nature of reality. I'm your host, Justin Perry. Enjoy these glitches in reality, stories that make you question, what are we doing here? What's actually happening? Why does reality seem so fluid? Why does it seem as if, at times, we switch dimensions? Maybe we do. Enjoy these Down the Rabbit Hole stories. Comment, like, and subscribe. This is your host, Justin Perry.
I saw myself. So, back in the early 90s, I worked as a bartender in a hotel lounge. People would occasionally call me Candy, and when I said that wasn't my name, they would say that I had a twin. My twin, named Candy, was a nurse at the local hospital. Now, I have heard about people looking so alike that they could be twins, but I was pretty sure that I didn't look like this woman. I have a very distinct look. One day I'm tending bar, and a guy calls my name, and I turn around to take his drink order, and this man is sitting at the bar with me. I was looking at myself. Absolutely identical, from hairstyle and color to my eyes and very distinct nose. I mean, it was as if I were looking into a mirror, all except the clothes. She was in scrubs. I felt so odd. It was like an out-of-body experience. I remembered vaguely something about seeing your doppelganger causing a paradox, and that one of you had to go. The woman didn't play a word. She looked as perplexed as me. The guy ordered their drinks. I turned to the prep area and fixed their drinks. When I turned back, they were gone. I figured that this woman must have been the woman named Candy that I'd been mistaken for. But man, when people said I had a twin, I never thought it would actually be my twin. In the same town that I moved to. I double-checked, and my mom, as far as I know, did not give birth to twins. Even weirder part of this whole thing is that I ended up moving to a different town and becoming a nurse. I wonder if I didn't see my future self that day in the bar. My cat disappeared out of thin air, and I am devastated. Basically what the subject says. I was home. I live on the second story of an apartment building. I was facing both doors to my apartment, and they were both locked with 3 locks each when this happened. All windows were closed and locked. Small apartment with hardly any furniture. She was there, and all of a sudden she literally vanished. Even if she had levitated and unlocked a door, she would have had to unlock all 3 locks. And then she would be in the hallway and have to enter a code to exit the main door. We have no holes, vents, or any other way for her to escape. We have a bed and a dresser and a stove and fridge and table, and no other furniture. I checked the shower, stove, fridge, cabinets, under the bed and table, in the box spring of the bed, in every drawer and cabinet, and she is nowhere. I am convinced that she quite literally disappeared out of thin air. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? Update: Grace has been found. Unfortunately, I still have no answers, and this situation is literally making my brain hurt. My friend was over, and he and my fiancée were in my kitchen, and she literally just appeared on the counter. My kitchen is as small as a bathroom, and I was sitting on the floor in the doorway, and she didn't come in, but we didn't see her come out of anywhere either. She literally was just all of a sudden on the counter. We are so relieved she is back, even as confusing and strange as this entire thing is. It's only been a few days, but she was starving and immediately ate a ton of food. She is being her usual self, meowing like crazy. We are going to take her next week to get a microchip, so if this happens again, we will know where she is. Sorry for bad English and typing. I remember this vividly and have evidence to prove it wasn't a dream. I got up one morning and completed my daily morning routine. While I was sitting eating my breakfast, it started to rain. I remember thinking this was annoying because I had to walk into town because I couldn't get my car past the roadworks being done outside. So when I was ready to leave, I put on a jacket and grabbed an umbrella to head into town. I made my way to the dog park that was on the way and cut through. As this is a shortcut to town, I remember having muddy feet and I was wet despite wearing my jacket as the weather was very bad. As I was walking through the park, I stepped into a puddle that was deeper than I thought, and I started to fall into the puddle. But then I saw blackness, and all of a sudden I was back in my kitchen making breakfast, and the time on the clock went back to what it was when I was making breakfast earlier. The scary thing comes next. I was in my jacket and my boots were muddy and made a mess on the floor. My evidence this actually happened. I didn't have my umbrella. I never seen my umbrella again. I had to clean up all the mud in the kitchen and dry out my clothing. I have no idea what happened or why, but it feels strange. This happened a few years ago and I finally worked up my courage to share. If you have a logical explanation, please let me know, as I have been terrified to ask anyone in case they think I'm crazy. I found the doppelganger of my friend who passed away. I read somewhere that scientists estimate everyone has 6 doppelgangers out there. I have no idea if it's a higher chance that happened or that I saw into some other reality. I was at Starbucks at an airport today and my partner nudged me and said to me, "That worker looks just like Lisa, but 10 years older." My close friend Lisa passed away a year ago now. The voice of the person working was the same. The same monotone voice, blank expression and style of dress as my friend had. Unique, but trendy. The doppelganger was a bit heavier than my friend was, but had the same body type. My friend had diabetes, so was overweight already. Same exact face, hair, eyes, everything, but older and a bit heavier now. I just stood there with goosebumps on my entire body watching this person. Their barista shift had ended and they were leaving. I really wanted to talk to them, but I didn't know what the fuck I would even say. Nothing I said would make sense, honestly. Me and my friend both were really into the paranormal, magic and such. We practiced divination and have encountered spirits in both our lives. The chances of it being a coincidence seem just as unlikely as some sort of slip, if I'm being honest. What does everyone think? Had a similar experience? I really wish I would have said something. I just froze. I didn't want to disturb this person who was getting off of work either. I watched myself walk from the tent site to the privy this morning. From my tent site. There's a place near me that has a nice flat 4-mile walk into a big lake with a couple of lean-tos and a tent site on the shore of the lake. I go there a half-dozen times a year or so. Each lean-to is about 300 yards apart, and the tent site is about 300 yards past the second lean-to. Each lean-to and the tent site has an outhouse, privy we call them, about 50 yards behind it, further from the lake. This is state land and it's very remote and all first come first served. I got to the trailhead about 4:30 last night and there were no other cars. It was raining buckets. I don't care. I enjoy laying in my hammock in the rain. This was perfect for me since I knew my tent site would be open. I prefer sleeping in a hammock to the hard floor of a lean-to. Ate dinner and listened to the loons. Had a restful sleep. Woke up once at 3:30 or so to pee. Slept for a few more hours. Woke up to the sound of heavy rain again, mixed with loon calls. I ate my breakfast and drank my coffee under my tarp while sitting in my hammock. I started breaking down camp and packing my pack, and as I was taking down my tarp, I got the sudden urge for my morning constitutional. I'm stuffing my tarp into my pack, and I look toward the trail that goes to the privy, and I see a guy, dressed in the same color clothes as me, gray rain pants and olive raincoat, turn off the main trail and start walking away from me toward my privy. Damn it, I need to do that. Why is this guy using my privy? I really don't want to start hiking back because walking usually loosens things up more and I don't want to shit my pants. So I'm just standing there in the fucking rain, and I had just put my tarp away. All I could think of was someone came into one of the lean-tos late last night, and maybe his buddy was using that privy, so he had to use mine. Fuck. So I'm standing there a full 15 minutes just staring at the trail to the privy, waiting for this guy to come out so I can go. Getting dumped on with rain with the entire time. Finally, I'm like, fuck this, maybe I missed him, come out. I walk through the woods toward the privy and go in. There is nobody there, and there is no evidence of any recent use. The pit inside is not very deep, and you can see old deposits, but nothing fresh. Well, I had to go, so I made a fresh deposit. It only took me a minute or so. I hiked out past the two lean-tos, and both were completely empty and nothing to indicate anyone was there. Hiked out in about an hour back to the parking lot, and my car was still the only one there. When I think back on it, I never made out a face on the guy. I thought it was weird he had the exact same raincoat and rain pants as me. Mine were a mixed set from two different manufacturers, and most people with rain pants have a matching jacket. As I hiked out, I became more and more convinced that I watched myself walk to the privy and then stood there like an idiot for 15 minutes in the rain. I know I didn't just imagine it. I was low-key kind of mad that this guy was using the privy at my tent site instead of the one at his own lean-to. My mom's best friend died but is now alive and well. Sometime a few years ago, my mom's best friend since childhood passed away from cancer. I live out of state and wasn't very involved, but I remember clearly being surprised to learn that she had died. I didn't even know she had cancer, and I remember calling my mom to tell her I was sorry for her loss. I don't remember exactly when this was, but it was 2 to 3 years ago. A month or two ago, I was talking to my mom on the phone, and she casually mentioned that she just, as in a few days before, helped this same friend close on a house. My mom is a real estate agent. I was obviously confused, but just let her keep talking. I didn't know how to say, isn't she dead? So I just let it be. But yeah, apparently my mom's best friend isn't dead anymore, and I'm very confused. I think I was stuck in a time loop. This happened a week ago. It was a normal day in school. It was the last hour and we were writing an exam. My friend sitting next to me asked for an answer on the exam. The teacher overheard it and told us not to talk with each other. He asks me the question. The teacher walks up to us and tells us not to talk. The teacher goes back. The exact same thing repeats over and over. It felt like an eternity. At first I was confused as to what was happening, but after a while I started freaking out. The only words I could utter out were help and what is happening. My friend kept saying the same phrase over and over. Calm down now. I was just staring at him as he started repeating this endlessly. This freaked me out even more. I just stood up, grabbed my bag and went out the class, leaving everyone behind. I don't know how I'm supposed to describe this part of what happened. I only have a dizzy memory of it. But from the part of picking up my bag all the way to leaving the schoolhouse, it felt like it was happening thousands of times. It all felt like it just kept repeating. As I was walking to the train station to drive back home, these weird loops started to fade off. When I was finally at home, they had already stopped. I don't have any explanation for what or how this happened. My best guess would be some kind of derealization. When I told my friend about what had happened, he didn't seem to remember most of it. He told me I just left the room for no apparent reason. Did I teleport? I needed to get to a specific place, as one often does, and so I needed to walk up this specific set of stairs in my school, and the fastest way to do that is to go in through this one specific door, so I do just that. I walk up the stairs. I've been going to this school for years. I know how to navigate it very well. But when I walk up the stairs, I find that suddenly I am on the complete opposite side of the building. Even though I didn't walk there, all I did was go through a door and walk up a set of stairs that do not lead to where I am currently. That's weird, I thought. So I go to the stairs that I need to be on, and while walking up them, I see the door that I originally went in through right there, leading to exactly where I needed to be, and not to where it took me. I do not know how this happened at all. It's as if I teleported from one place to another. I'm honestly still freaked out. I will never forget this. When I was in college, I did an internship at a hospital. One day I saw myself sitting in a waiting area. It wasn't just someone who resembled me. We were identical down to the hairstyle and general mannerisms. I stopped in my tracks and thought, that's me. What I felt can only be described as dread. In retrospect, I wish I had approached her me, but at that moment I had a horrible feeling and needed to get out of there. I still think about it from time to time and wonder about it. I want to say she was only someone with a very strong resemblance to me, but she wasn't. I can't explain it. The moment I saw her, I just knew. I won't forget the feeling either, that I had to get away from her. Does anyone have any thoughts about what occurred? It's a head-scratcher. I love reading stories about objects that mysteriously disappear and reappear. Then, it happened to me. One weekend in February 2023, my daughter purchased a necklace that she fell in love with while we vacationed in Eureka Springs, AR. The next week, she called me one day in a panic while I was at work because she lost the pendant while she was getting ready in her bathroom. Her bathroom is very, very small, and the floor is marble tile. She said that when she was putting on her necklace, the pendant dropped and she heard it hit the tile. She searched and searched but couldn't find it. I rolled my eyes thinking this was just her not looking hard enough. I got home and searched the tiny bathroom. I got on my hands and knees and looked under the cabinets and in any gaps in the baseboards. I finally had to give up. It wasn't there. Later that summer, we had an awesome but exhausting time at Lollapalooza. After the last day, we got up early and drove 8 hours to return home. For some reason, my daughter had an urge to clean her room, which has never happened. At the time, we had a lady who would clean our home weekly. Well, my daughter noticed that her ceiling fan blades were dusty, so she got up on her bed and reached up to clean them. She screamed, "Mom, guess what?" Her necklace pendant was on the ceiling fan blade. I was shocked. She uses that fan every night. Of course, we put the pendant on the fan and turned it on to see what happened. As expected, the pendant flew off immediately. We have no idea how her pendant disappeared after she dropped it on the bathroom floor and reappeared months later on her ceiling fan. Edit: Eureka Springs is in Arkansas, not Alaska. Man arrived twice. The place we lived at the time, few years ago, was a house on a gravel dead-end road across from a church. The church had 2 drives because it had a circle drive that went under an overhang, but there was no drive behind or around the church. None. One way in, one way out. That gravel dead-end road. I was babysitting. The kids I nannied for and mine were all playing outside in the side yard. No one went around back of the house because there was poison ivy. So we were always in the front side, always in view of the road. Church's groundskeeper comes down the cross street, turns on the gravel, dark gray Honda, same car he's driven for years. Smiles, nods, and waves. The church was good neighbors, nice guy. He drove slowly past, through the church's parking lot, to park in front of the garage beyond the church, which is also in view. I wasn't watching him, I was watching the kids, but I was facing the church. All this is in my field of view. I was thinking to myself a few minutes later that he must be working on equipment inside today. He hadn't walked back through the parking lot to the church. Then I hear tires on gravel, look up at the cross street again. Here comes the dark gray Honda. I stared at it confused. The church groundskeeper smiles, nods, waves, just like normal. I whip my head around and there's no car in front of the church's garage. This car goes and parks there like normal. About a minute later, he strolls back along the parking lot, checking out the landscaping. I cannot state firmly enough that there was one single way in and out of our goofy little enclave, and that was gravel. And it makes a sound I look up at every time I hear it, reflexively. It was not long enough for him to have come, left, done something, and returned. It was maybe 10-15 minutes at most, and he did not leave. I would have seen that. and if I wasn't looking, I would have heard it and looked. Guy came almost daily. Same guy, same car, same smile and wave. He just showed up twice. Vardoger is my guess. Someone explained that concept when I shared this on Facebook, feeling like I'd gone crazy. I drove a whole mile without going anywhere. Hey y'all, first time posting, so apologies for any screw-ups. This happened a few years back, but I remember it so vividly because it was just so disorienting. At the time I was working at a mall close to my home, about 5 miles, straight shot for the most part. I was driving home from work one day and I stop at a red light. This light is right in front of a park that I go to often. I was in the lane next to the left turn lane. First car stopped at the light in my lane. Next to me in the left turn lane was a white F-150, and to my right there's a smaller red car in the right turn lane. The light turns green. I go straight, and the 2 other vehicles make their turns since there's no traffic coming in the opposite direction. A few moments later, I pull up to the next red light. Only it isn't the next street over. It's the same traffic light in front of the park, and next to me are what seems to be the same 2 cars from earlier in the same lanes they were in the first time, even though I had seen them go off in opposite directions. Maybe it's possible I was just on autopilot doing a drive I do every day. But then how could I end up at the same place I know I had already passed? Still gives me a weird feeling to this day. Levitated above the ground? As a child, I experienced some weird stuff, but this one is right at the top. I guess you can call it a glitch because I have no idea how I did it. P.S. I am not a native speaker, so I apologize for my mistakes. I know childhood memories are not allowed, but this memory is one of those memories you just don't forget. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and we used to live in a site where houses were surrounded by a beautiful big garden, to give you a better perspective. Anyway, I was at the balcony of our house, like in the picture, more like an entrance to our house. I was sitting there alone. It was a sunny day. There were kids playing next door, and there was this girl in the group. She was so beautiful. I still remember her face. Being a kid, I somehow wanted to get her attention and impress her along with others. I was a shy kid back then, so I thought of ways to impress her and came up with this idea. If I could jump like a Chinese monk and try to levitate in the air, that would do the trick. I had this feeling that I could actually do it. I just did. I decided to try it out. At the end, what can go wrong, right? I started to jump off the balcony, and I knew she was looking at me, but to my luck, it was not happening. Obviously, no surprise there. With each try, I was looking at her, and I could see that I was not getting her attention at all. Then I remember a moment where I took a deep breath. I could feel that I was in this deep state where I was purely focused on levitating. After my unsuccessful attempts, I decided to give it one last shot. When I was ready, I sprinted and jumped. I closed my eyes, and at that moment I was looking at myself from a third angle. I saw myself levitating in the air for 5 seconds, like a monk in the movie with arms wide open. The view spinned around myself. I felt like God was looking at me. When I opened my eyes, I fell to the ground. At first, I couldn't believe it. I turned to the group and saw the impressions on their faces. They were in shock and scared. Being shocked as well, I ran inside my house. I started to think to myself, how the hell did I do it? Was it a normal thing? As a kid, I had no idea. Nevertheless, I knew I got her attention. I thought I just jumped like a ninja in the movies, and I was imagining that I was in a movie scene. After processing the whole situation, I wanted to see the girl and maybe finally talk to her. When I returned, to my surprise, they were jumping off the stairs trying to do the same thing. I went up to them and asked what they were doing. They immediately asked, "How did you stay in the air for so long?" At that moment I realized it wasn't my imagination. As for the girl, after a few minutes, she took off with her family. Did I discover an accident telekinesis method? Was it a glitch? I still don't know. PS 2. My story might sound a bit off as I chose an interesting way to impress a girl, but in fact, what led me to do that was the feeling inside of me that I can just do it. If I wanted attention or anything like that, I wouldn't come up with a story such as this one. Thanks for reading my story anyways. Okay, so I am not on drugs or alcohol. I don't take any meds that would have a hallucinogenic side effect, and I most def was awake. I was driving up to the town I used to work in to meet a former co-worker for dinner. I've driven the same path to work every day since roughly last July, so I am driving along listening to music and I see my make, model car and jokingly think to myself, oh, there I go, until the car gets closer and I see the driver is wearing the same sunglasses as me. Big blue mirrored lenses, hard to mistake. At this point, I'm confused and staring. My windows aren't tinted and I could see that I was wearing the same shirt and had my hair styled the same way as today. I realized I was about to rear-end the car in front of me, so I slammed on my brakes. After assuring myself I must be crazy, I looked in my rear view and the car was gone. No curves or anything, just gone. What the hell did I just see? Me and my husband are quite in shock after experiencing something really weird yesterday. Background. 1 year ago, March 2023, during our travels to Vegas, we went to a taco spot called Tacos El Gordo. There was a long line, and while in line, the guy in back of us started making conversation. It was a very high-spirited guy with braces that explained he was staying at a hotel nearby and had come the previous night with his wife and kids to get some tacos. They really liked the tacos, so they had to come back. He shared that they'd flown in from the PNW, a bit about his job and his wives. His wife and children eventually joined him, hangs out for a bit in line with him, then they head back out to find a seat. These details matter later on in this story. We share a bit about ourselves, do some more small talk. We finally get to the front of the line, order our food, and say our goodbyes, nice to meet yous. That's it. Never see them again. Totally forget about this incident. Present day, 1 year later, March 2024. We took a weekend trip to San Diego, have never been there, so we wanted to check it out. Context. I want to add some context to this day because I think it's important to note all the things that had to happen, change for the event to have happened. First of all, out of all weekends, it decided to downpour in San Diego this weekend, so we had to readjust our plans. We'd planned to do those trolley hop-on, hop-off rides to the main sightseeing locations in San Diego. Unfortunately, because it was raining so badly, the trolley decided to limit the number of shuttles that passed by, leaving us stranded in the first location we hopped off. We came up with Plan B, which was to make our way to museums in Balboa Park to wait for the rain to stop, and then head to a few other neighborhoods once we got some clear skies. Once we got through all that, we headed back towards the neighborhood we were staying at, tried out a bar but weren't feeling the vibe, walked for a bit, and finally decided to head to where the event occurred. The event. My husband suggested that we should go to a taco spot I'd pinned on Google, called Tacos El Gordo. We weren't too hungry, but we might as well taste it because it had great reviews. There's a huge line, and as we're waiting in line, we realize that this is actually the same Tacos El Gordo as the one in Las Vegas we'd gone the year before. Cool, didn't know they had a chain. We start talking about how we'll compare which location was better. There is this couple in front us, and right in front of them we notice this guy that starts chatting them up. We overheard him making small talk, asking them what they did for a living, etc. I briefly catch a glimpse of this guy and mention to my husband, "Hey, doesn't that guy look like that one guy we saw in Vegas last year? That would be funny if it was him, wouldn't it?" Then we stared more carefully. He doesn't have the braces anymore, but that definitely looks like him. We remembered that he had his wife and kids, so we tell ourselves, if we see them, then we know for sure it is him. 1 minute later, we see them. Holy fuck, our faces go white and we're stunned. To triple confirm, my husband actually goes up to the guy and asked him, "This might sound weird, but did you happen to be in Vegas last year and also went to Tacos El Gordo while there?" The guy confirmed that he had been. He said his family flew in for spring break this year to San Diego, were walking around and happened to notice that this was the same taco spot they went to while in Vegas, so they decided to stop at that moment. He actually did not remember our conversation in Vegas, but he kinda laughed and thought it was also a weird coincidence. We again made some small talk while in line, got our tacos, and went our separate ways. What the fuck? This was just not coincidence. This doesn't happen. Ever. What is the probability that we'd both end up in the same city 1 year later, at the same restaurant, same weekend, same time, only 2 feet away? Not to mention that our whole day wasn't supposed to go this way. It could have gone completely differently. And yet somehow, every single decision we made up to this moment led us to the same spot. We actually weren't even supposed to go to San Diego on this particular weekend. I'd originally booked it for 2 weeks prior, but realized we had plans, so rebooked everything all over again. How does this happen? P.S. To the kind stranger we met, see you next year in whichever city we decide to make a trip to next March.